Shalom, people. This is Brother Laws coming at you with another video. And I want to do a book report on Arthur Koestler's The 13th Tribe. I just got through reading it last week. It took me about a year to get through it with understanding. See, I could have gone through it in less time than that, but I really wanted to understand what he was saying. This is the paperback version right here. I ordered it online from Amazon. I thought that it would be hard to find, but apparently it's commonplace knowledge amongst many of the Khazarian Ashkenazi Jews knowledge about this book. The I don't know a great deal about the author Koestler, except to say that he was himself either Ashkenazim or Khazarian Jew. I think he was Khazarian, and I know that they said that either a year or 2 years after he wrote the book, he supposedly committed suicide. I don't know if that's true. I would think it's possible, because they said that he couldn't figure out why, after he wrote the book, why he was ostracized by the rest of the Jewish community, because and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but at the end of the book, in the addendum, he clearly states that he didn't write the book to cause people to say, well, see, there goes the reason for the Jews not to be in the land. He said he wrote the book to show that their pagan roots, and that they wasn't actually Shemitic people. He wrote to show that most of the Ashkenaz and Khazarians that are over there do not believe in the Bible. He said that to them, a lot of the things in the Bible is myth. He said just the mere fact that the UN had did the UN mandate to get them back over there in the land, and the fact that they were there made that their right to be there, not because of some biblical understanding. He clearly states he knows, and he even stated some rabbis in the addendum that clearly taught that no, we are not the people, we are converts. But that's at the end of the book. I want to talk to you about the whole book. It was a very interesting read. Kind of brought back to my mind, because it dealt with a lot of things dealing in the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages. It talked about the Crusades, and it talked about the Mongol invasion. It talked about a lot of stuff, ancient Asia Minor, European history, kind of stuff that I remember reading about when I was a little boy, when we were given books to read and do book reports on about the Crusades and stuff like that. And just reading that, about the different intertribal battles, talking about the Turkish, Slavic tribes, and their conflicts and competition between them. But it mainly keys on the Khazarians, their origins. He writes from the perspective of historians and explorers back then, and like I said, I wanted to understand it. He talks about who the people aren't. But he does give several instances in the book where he talks about who the real, what he calls the real Jews, and he hints many times that they were dark. Um, the beginning of the book, he does key in on the biblical, uh, stance that some Jews used to get in the land, and he brings back out the fact in the Bible that what he is saying is not nothing against what Scripture says. He clearly shows, like for instance, let's go here to Genesis. He goes to Genesis, I think it is, let me find it here. He goes to Genesis, the 9th chapter, and verse 27. And this is a key scripture for people that know about the Noahic mandate for the 3 sons of Noah. So what we'll start here in chapter 9, and we'll begin at verse 18. And it said, "And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. And these are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brothers without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backwards, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brother. And he said, Blessed be the master Elohim of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Now, he keys in on verse 27. Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Now, what he shows clearly here is that the progenitor of the tribes that went into Europe, because we know the Tower of Babel, when all the nations were dispersed, that the Japhetic tribes migrated north. They migrated toward, actually they didn't migrate into Europe so much as they migrated into what we call Asia Minor, Turkey. They migrated into places like Germany, some of the Scandinavian nations, but mainly they was in, a lot of them still was in that area that we call Asia Minor, at least, and then some went to the Mediterranean. Now the thing that we know is that all 3 sons of Noah were black men. Noah himself was black. There is no denying that. We know that you can get white out of black, but you can't get black out of white. So that's the key thing to remember, that it was no color thing. It had to do with the fact that the parting of the land, that this is what the tribe chose. But in the prophecy that Noah gives, he says that Japhet shall dwell in the tents of Shem. Now, this always kind of puzzled me, because before I understood about the so-called curse of Ham, which we see here, there was no curse of Ham. The curse was on Canaan, Ham's son. And the fact of the matter is, the only person that was that Canaan came up under that curse too was the Israelites. When they came into Canaan and they subdued them, and we know that some of the Canaanite tribes became tributary to them, and they hewed wood and draw water for them. But if you say there's a curse of Ham, then the Egyptians wouldn't have been as great as they were if they would have been serving them servants. Then Nimrod wouldn't have been great as he was. He was a Hamite. He was a son of Ham. So we know clearly it wasn't all the quote unquote dark people that would be servant of servants. It was just Canaan, and it was only for the time that when the Israelites came into Canaan, because the fact was the portion of land that the Canaanites were dwelling in was never supposed to be theirs. That was supposed to be Sham's land in the first place. But then you look at the fact that verse 27 says that even Shem's tents are going to be possessed by Japhet. Japhet's name means to enlarge. But if you go into the Hebrew and look up what the word enlarge, that word they use to make enlarge, that word also can mean to be deceived. So the word could be, and Elohim shall deceive Japhet, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, meaning there will come a time that Japhet would come down out of the northern regions that were given to him, and not just possess the lands of Canaan, some of the places that Canaan had been, or the descendants of Canaan, but he would also come in and possess the dwelling places, because the tents means where you live at. That means the land, the place where you lived at. That he would come in and take Shem's land, and he also would come in and take Canaan's land and possess it. And that both would be subject to him. And that is one of the key things. If you go to pages, this was found on page 72, where he talked about this, where Arthur Koestler talked about this curse. Let's find it, page 72, and I'm gonna show you what he stated in there. Okay, so where is it at? Okay, so in this particular writing, he talks about the dialogue between the Khazarian king, after he had converted to Judaism, with the Jews that were in Spain and Portugal, when he was writing him about Hadassah. It was a Jew in Spain named Hadassah that had wrote and found out about the conversion of the Khazars out in Eastern Europe, and he was asking them about how did they come about to be such a big Jewish kingdom, being that the Jews in Eastern Europe, who were the authentic Jews, the black Jews, they were being under persecution from Spain and Portugal. So this is what Koestler writes here. He said, it starts with a fanfare of greetings, then repudiates the main contents of Hadassah's letter, proudly emphasizing that the Khazar kingdom gives the lie to those who say the scepter of Judah has fallen from the Jews' hands, and that there is no place on earth for a kingdom of their own. This is followed by a rather cryptic remark to the fact that already our fathers have exchanged friendly letters, which are preserved in our archives and are known to our elders. Joseph then proceeds to provide a genealogy. Now, Joseph was the king of the Khazarians, right? And Hadassah was a Jew. He was of the tribe of Judah. Some of those that had been scattered into Europe during the fall of Jerusalem, when the Romans scattered all the book by called From Babylon to Timbuktu says about 1 million black Jews went into Africa, but a lot of them were taken into slavery into Europe and other places by the Romans and scattered in there. And these are the descendants. Some of them ended up in Spain and Portugal. So when they found out about the Khazarians who had converted to Judaism in 7 to 18 AD, he writes, because they're trying to look for a place to get away. They know they couldn't go back to Jerusalem, but they said, hey, there's a big kingdom out there that's full of Jews. We want to come. So he started asking King Joseph, who was the king of the Khazarians, he started asking them about their genealogy. So this is what King Joseph started talking to him about. He started talking to him. He said, although a fierce Jewish nationalist proud of wielding the scepter of Judah, he cannot and does not claim for them Semitic descent. He traces their ancestry not to Shem, but to Noah's third son, Japheth, as more precisely to Japheth's grandson, to Gomer, the ancestor of all Turkish tribes. We have found in the family registries of our father Joseph asserts boldly that Togarmah had 10 sons, and the name of their offspring are as follows: Ugar, Duras, Avars, Huns, Basilica, Tarnakat, Khazars, Zagora, Bulgars, and Sabar. We are the sons of Khazar, the seventh. The identity of some of these tribes with names spelt in the Hebrew script is rather dubious, but that hardly matters. The characteristic feature in this genealogical exercise is the amalgamation of Genesis with Turkish tribal tradition. And that little mark, that little cross there, leads you to some footnotes here at the bottom where he goes into more details about how the letter came about. And this letter between King Joseph of the Khazars and Hadassah has been greatly scrutinized, and there are a lot of people to try to say that it might be a fake. I really don't believe that Arthur Koestler would use flimsy evidence, because remember, again, like I said in his addendum, he wasn't trying to say because the Jews that were in Palestine, that they needed to get out of the land because they were not the Semitic descendants. he was trying to show to the people that some of us that were in Israel, we are not there because we think we are the Semitic people, the true Semitic. We're there because the mandate of the UN said we could be here, and also from the fact that our determination and our great military skill, and the fact that we have held this identity of being Jews this long, to us mandates that we be here. Now, the thing is that even though he said he didn't write the letter to give people that wanted them out the land ammunition, they still angered the other Khazarian Ashkenazi Jews that were there, and they said that they ostracized him, which they said they believe that's why he committed suicide, because they said he felt maybe that he was being misunderstood by his own people. So clearly, like I said, he didn't write the book, so he can say, see, we don't need to be in the land because we ain't the people. He was saying we need to be in the land because we understand that people are going to find out that we aren't the people. So we're trying to tell you right now we ain't the people, but we stand in the land because, first of all, we don't believe in the mythology of the Torah and all this stuff. We believe in the mandate that the UN gave, and we also believe that just by the fact that we have been in this Judaism so long that you can't deny us. It don't matter to us if we ain't the real people. But what gets lost in the like I said, the translation of his thought, is that there are some that say, what does mandate that those that say they are real Jews, what mandate do we have that we got to give to them if we do not believe that belief in the scriptures, even though we use the prophecies and all that as one of the reasons why we should get in the land. But now, because so many of our people are secularists and don't believe that, we don't feel that the mandate of who the people really is an important issue anymore. And so therefore we are gonna just deny through silence on all the evidence that is being brought out, whether or not the real Semitic people still exist, which we know, and which I believe that the black people, the Negroes, are some descendants of the Negroes, because remember, all dark people are not Hamites. All dark people are not Hamites. And in fact, when in page 101 in Arthur Koestler's book, he talks about what he calls the ancient desert Hebrews, which gives me the mind to think that he might have known, like I said, that black people are the descendants of the let me find it here, are the descendants, but like I said, he said it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let me find it here. There you go, right there. Okay, this is page 72. This is what Arthur Koestler says. He said, if they professed a Judaizing religion, it must have been closer to the faith of the ancient desert Hebrews than to rabbinical orthodoxy. They may have even been followers of the fundamentalist sect of the Koraites and hence considered heretics, but this is pure speculation. Now, and I'm not gonna obviously be able to go over everything in the book. You're gonna have to read it like me and glean what you can out of it. But basically what he talks about is there were many Turkish tribes in there. at that time and during the crusade, right before the crusade time, the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, were competing for the Japhetic tribes in Asia Minor and in China and Russia and all these places. They were competing. And then out of those competitions between those three faiths, when they gathered their armies, the prize was Jerusalem. I remember that when I was a child, reading about the Crusades, how that they would go into the quote unquote Holy Land, and how they would have Jewish armies fighting and Christian armies fighting and Muslim armies fighting over those lands. Well, in here it talks about how some of them Turkish tribes converted to Islam, some converted to Christianity, and some converted to Judaism. The Khazars was not the only one. It was some Khazars that actually converted to Judaism. I mean, not Judaism, to Islam. And there was some Khazars that converted to the Byzantine Christianity. So this is not a far-fetched thing. This is known. You remember the movie Malcolm X, when Malcolm X talked about when he went to Mecca, how he seen Muslims that were blonde-haired, blue-eyed. These were some of the descendants of some of these people who had been practicing Islam longer than some of the Africans that were in Africa, because Islam spread first from the Middle East into parts of Russia, China, Asia Minor before it even got to Africa. So yeah, it's not a far-fetched, but here he was comparing it was one Turkish tribe called the Karathites, who they had their own form of Judaism that they was practicing that was a little different than that of the Khazarians. And Koestler was saying that it was some writers that was thinking that, hey, they might have been practicing the faith of the real ancient desert Hebrews than to the rabbinical orthodoxy, because what Koestler shows in his book, he shows that there were black Jewish rabbis that, because remember, you can remember when, and in fact, let's go there to 1 Peter. They had been Jews. They had been dwelling in Babylon. They had been living in Babylon since the time that they had been, exiled there. When Jerusalem fell to Nebuchadnezzar, and they still remain there. But we know that out of Babylon came the Talmudic brand of, actually it was the faith that Yah gave to the Hebrews when they was in the desert was not Judaism. He just gave them he gave them the covenant. He gave them the covenant. It was not a religion. But we know they turned it into religion. Well, that just say when they came back from Babylon, they came back with the Talmud, and they came back with a lot of pagan faith mixed in with what they was practicing, and it became into the Kabbalah and the Talmud. And this is the thing that Jesus was fighting against when he came, when he talked about the traditions of the Father that they had been practicing. But notice here, this is 1 Peter. Here's who Peter is writing to. He said, Peter, an apostle of Yeshua Mashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, elect according to the foreknowledge of Yahuwah and Yahuwah the Father through sanctification. Okay, so some of these areas are some of the areas that the Jews were living in Asia Minor right here. But then when you go to 2 Peter Let's see who he writing to here. This is Peter writing again to Simon Peter, a servant and apostle of Yeshua Mashiach, to them that have attained like precious faith. See, I'm trying to find where he talked about to the ones that were in Babylon. Hold on. I'm going to find it. Hold on. It might have been First Peter. Let me go back there. Okay. Okay. Let me see here. Okay. Let me go back. Yeah, Asia. When we talk about Asia, Bithynia, yeah, those areas where they were at. Might have been James too that I was thinking of, because James writes to the, let me see. Yeah, I might have been James, but Peter does, let me see. James, okay. Scattered abroad. Okay, well, okay. Okay, there you go. I knew I was right the first time it was First Peter, but it wasn't the first chapter. It was the last chapter. He said right here, he said the assembly that is at Babylon elected together with you salute you, and so does Marcus, my son. Okay, so clearly there were believers in Yeshua in the way that were in Babylon, but there was also still Jews, black Jews, that were there practicing Judaism, that around the time, like I said, that the different Abrahamic faiths were going into sending rabbis and people into Asia Minor, because of the scattering and everything, that the kingdom of Khazar wrote to Babylon, because that's where the main concentration of these Talmudic rabbis was, and some in Jerusalem still, and they brought them there, and they had Christians, they had Muslims, and they had the Talmudic rabbis to teach them their faith, and they decided on which one they wanted. And the Khazarian kingdom leaned onto the Talmudic brand of Judaism. Now, I do remember reading in the book where he said at one time the Khazarian kingdom, they kind of was like, tepid believers in the Torah and stuff, like in the Talmud rather, and because you see that most of the teachings they got were Talmudic. It was not Torah based. And that leads me to this scripture. I know I'm jumping all across the place, but you'll see where I'm going here. Let's go to